Please, mister. I'm so hungry.
The rifle was already aimed when the voice came through the gate. The old cowboy's finger tightened slightly on the trigger. He had expected a rustler or a thief creeping toward the fence at dusk. Instead, a thin shape stood between the wooden rails, barely tall enough to reach the latch. The voice came again, rough and dry. "Don't shoot." The cowboy did not lower the rifle. He squinted through the fading light and saw a child standing there, ribs pushing through a torn shirt, hair hanging in dirty knots. The kid swayed once but did not step back. "You're trespassing," the cowboy said. The child lifted their chin. "Then shoot." Silence settled over the yard. The wind rattled the loose boards on the barn roof. The cowboy kept the rifle steady, but the words slowed in his throat. "What do you want?" he asked. The child answered without hesitation. "Food." The cowboy studied the small figure. The kid's hands were empty. No sack. No horse. No shoes worth speaking of. Just dust and hunger. "Where's your family?" he asked. The child stared straight at him. "Dead." The word sat heavy in the air. The cowboy's shoulders sank a little. He lowered the rifle halfway. "Everybody says that when they want something," he muttered. The child shrugged weakly. "Everybody's right sometimes." The cowboy looked toward the empty road behind the gate. No wagon tracks. No riders. Nothing but quiet fields stretching toward the hills. He lowered the rifle the rest of the way. "Kid," he said, "you picked the wrong ranch." The child blinked. "Why?" The cowboy pushed the gate open with his boot. The hinges groaned. "Because nothing good comes through this gate." The child did not move. "You offering food or a speech?" The cowboy let out a dry laugh. "You got a mouth on you." The kid stepped forward slowly, each step careful like the ground might disappear. When the child reached the yard, the cowboy saw just how small they were. Maybe 10. Maybe less. The cowboy nodded toward the porch. "Kitchen's inside." The child stopped again. "You gonna call the sheriff?" The cowboy leaned the rifle against the fence post. "For feeding a hungry kid?" "For harboring one." The cowboy's eyes narrowed. "You running from the law?" The child shook their head. "Running from something worse." The cowboy studied the kid's face. Dirt streaked the cheeks, but the eyes were sharp and alert. Too alert for someone starving. "Name?" he asked. The child hesitated. "Lena." "That your real one?" Lena shrugged. "It works." The cowboy rubbed his jaw. "Well, Lena, you best get inside before you fall over." Lena nodded, but her gaze drifted past the house. She was staring toward the back of the ranch. Toward the old well behind the barn. The cowboy followed her eyes. The well sat crooked in the weeds, its stone rim blackened from a fire that had scarred the ranch decades ago. Nobody in town talked about it anymore. The boards nailed across the opening had rotted gray with age. Lena whispered softly, almost to herself. "You burned it." The cowboy turned sharply. "What?" Lena kept staring at the well. "The fire." The cowboy felt a cold weight settle in his chest. "Kid," he said slowly, "what did you just say?" Lena looked back at him with a calm expression that did not match her small body. "The well burned," she said. "You tried to bury it." The cowboy stared at her. "Who told you that?" Lena shook her head. "Nobody." The wind picked up across the yard, rattling the barn doors. The cowboy stepped closer to the child. "You been here before?" Lena's eyes returned to the well. No, the cowboy waited. Lena swallowed. "But I remember it." The cowboy felt something deep in his chest shift uneasily. That well had not been spoken of in 20 years. Not by him. Not by anyone still alive in this valley. He looked again at the thin child standing in his yard, dirt on her face, hunger in her bones, and a strange calm in her voice. "Come inside," he said quietly. Lena nodded once. But as she walked past him toward the porch, she kept looking back over her shoulder at the burned well, as if something inside it was still watching the ranch and had finally been found again tonight. The child ate like the food might disappear if she slowed down. Lena hunched over the kitchen table with the bowl in both hands, spoon scraping fast against the sides. The old cowboy sat across from her, elbows on the wood, watching in silence. The lantern between them burned low and yellow. Outside, the night settled around the ranch. Lena swallowed another mouthful and barely breathed before digging again. The cowboy leaned back in his chair. "Slow down," he said. Lena shook her head while chewing. "Can't. You'll choke." "Worth it." The spoon kept moving. The cowboy rubbed his beard slowly. "How long since you ate?" Lena shrugged. "Couple days." "Couple?" "Maybe 3. The cowboy stared at the empty bread plate. "You walked here?" Lena nodded without looking up. "From where?" "Down the road." The cowboy snorted softly. "There ain't nothing down that road." Lena finally paused and wiped her mouth with the back of her sleeve. "There used to be." The cowboy watched her carefully. "You mean the old farms?" Lena gave a small nod. "Before they burned." The cowboy's fingers tightened around his coffee mug. "Those places burned 20 years ago." Lena dipped the spoon again. "Fire lasts longer than people think." Silence filled the kitchen. The clock on the wall ticked once. Then again. The cowboy studied her thin face in the lantern light. "You got parents?" Lena swallowed. "Had them." "Where?" "Buried." "By who?" Lena lifted one shoulder. "The ground." The cowboy sighed and reached for the bread loaf again. He cut another slice and slid it across the table. Lena grabbed it quickly. "Easy," he muttered. "No one's taking it." Lena tore the bread in half and ate like she didn't believe him. The cowboy watched another minute before speaking again. "How'd you find this ranch?" Lena chewed slowly this time. "I remembered it." The cowboy frowned. "From when?" "Before." "Before what?" Lena didn't answer. She finished the bread and leaned back in the chair. Her eyes drifted toward the kitchen window. The cowboy followed her gaze again. The well stood in the dark behind the barn. Even from here, the black marks around its stones showed like old scars. Lena spoke quietly. "You burned it bad." The cowboy's chair creaked when he leaned forward again. "You keep saying that." Lena nodded. "Because it's true." "Kid." His voice hardened. "You weren't here." Lena rested her hands in her lap. "I know." "Then how do you know about that well?" Lena tilted her head slightly. "You nailed boards across it." The cowboy froze. "There were 3 boards," she continued calmly. "One broke last winter." The cowboy stood up slowly and walked to the window. The lantern light followed him halfway. He stared outside. The boards were exactly like she said. One had snapped loose months ago during a storm. He had never told anyone. No one came close enough to see it. He turned back slowly. "Who told you that?" Lena shook her head again. "No one." The cowboy crossed the room and sat back down. His voice dropped lower. "Kid, people in this valley don't talk about that well." Lena met his eyes. "That's because they buried what happened there." The cowboy's jaw tightened. "Nothing happened there." Lena leaned forward slightly. "People died." The cowboy slammed his hand against the table. The bowl rattled. "Enough." Lena did not flinch. "You heard them screaming." His breathing grew heavier. Stop talking. Lena's voice softened but did not stop. You smelled the smoke. The cowboy pushed his chair back and stood again. I said stop. Lena watched him quietly. You tried to pull someone out. The cowboy's face went pale. Kid. Lena spoke one last sentence like she was stating a simple fact. But the fire was already inside the well. The cowboy turned away and walked to the sink. He gripped the edge of it until his knuckles whitened. Behind him, Lena's chair creaked softly. I didn't come here for food, she said. The cowboy kept his back turned. Then why are you here? Lena's voice remained calm. Because you're the only one who didn't die. The cowboy slowly turned back toward the table. The lantern light flickered across his face. Die from what? He asked quietly. Lena answered without blinking. The fire. The room went still again. The clock ticked once more. Outside, the barn boards shifted in the wind. Lena lowered her voice slightly. You remember that night? The cowboy stared at her like he was seeing something that should not exist. Lena folded her hands together on the table. I remember it too. The cowboy's throat tightened. That's impossible. Lena glanced toward the window again. Toward the burned well waiting in the dark. Then she looked back at him. No, she said softly. It's not. The night came with a low rumble of tires on the gravel. Lena froze mid-bite, eyes darting to the shadows outside the kitchen window. The old cowboy glanced up, frowning. Who's that? He asked quietly. A truck stopped near the gate. The engine idled. A badge glinted faintly in the lantern light. The sheriff, Lena whispered, her voice tight. Evening, the sheriff said, stepping out of the truck. The cowboy opened the door slowly, hands empty. Evening, he replied, watching the man carefully. Kid come through here? The sheriff asked, eyes scanning Lena. What kid? The cowboy said, though his stomach twisted. The skinny one. Orphan. Lena's small hand clutched the edge of the table. Don't tell him, she muttered. The cowboy's eyes flicked toward her. You running from the law? He asked the sheriff. No, she said quietly. Then why hide? The sheriff stepped closer, smiling thinly. Because he's lying, Lena whispered. The cowboy's eyebrows shot up. Kid, what the hell are you talking about? The sheriff ignored her, leaning against the doorframe. You gonna open this door or keep hiding behind it? The cowboy sighed and swung it wide. What do you want, Doyle? He asked. The sheriff's badge caught the lantern light. That kid, he said casually. Lena stepped into the doorway without hesitation. I'm right here, she said sharply. Doyle's smile faltered slightly. Well, look at that, he muttered. Lena's eyes were cold. You remember me. Doyle blinked, unease creeping across his face. No, he said. Lena's voice dropped. You were there. At the well. The sheriff's hand twitched near his coat pocket. The cowboy crossed his arms. What's she saying? He demanded. Lena's gaze never left Doyle. You watched the fire, she said. The sheriff's eyes darted away for a moment. His calm demeanor cracked. Kid, don't call me that, Lena interrupted. The cowboy glanced between them. Explain, he said. Lena's jaw tightened. He let them burn. The sheriff's face went pale. I don't know what you're talking about. The cowboy leaned closer, voice low and sharp. Kid, tell me what you mean. Lena's small fists clenched on the doorframe. You watched the fire. You didn't stop it. The sheriff's mouth opened. You lied for years, she cut in. I remember it all. The cowboy's chair creaked behind him as he ran a hand through his hair. Kid, who told you that? Lena shook her head. Nobody. I just know. The sheriff stepped back, unease growing in his stance. That's impossible, he said quietly. Nothing's impossible, Lena said. Not fire. Not memory. Not the truth. The cowboy's eyes narrowed at Doyle. Kid's talking crazy. Maybe, Doyle said, voice tighter now. Maybe not. Lena's gaze flicked past the sheriff. He tried to hide it. You tried to hide it too. The cowboy's breath caught. What are you doing to this kid? He asked, voice strained. Nothing, Doyle said quickly. She's imagining things. Lena's stare bored into him. I saw them. Everyone. Burning. Doyle's hands curled into fists. That's not real. That fire's dead. Lena's voice was steady. You're not. And neither is the memory. The cowboy felt the room grow smaller, the shadows pressing in. Doyle's lips trembled. Kid, that fire was an accident. No, Lena said softly. You ordered it. You stood there. You watched. You let them die. The cowboy could see the sheriff's calm demeanor shatter. The badge that gleamed in the lantern light now seemed dull, like it belonged to someone else. Lena's eyes met the cowboy's. Do you see it now? She asked. The cowboy swallowed hard. I see her, he said finally, voice low. Doyle's face went white. Kid, Lena shook her head slowly. No one believed me. But you were there. You watched. The wind rattled the barn doors outside. The old well behind it seemed to thrum in the dark. Lena stepped forward, small but unafraid. And now, she said, you can't lie anymore. The sheriff swallowed. His eyes darted to the well and back to the cowboy. It wasn't supposed to end this way, he muttered. It's over, Lena said. It's only beginning. The cowboy's chest tightened. He had faced men before. He had faced fire. But the child standing in his kitchen, fearless, reminded him of things he had buried. Old ghosts. Old sins. Kid, what are you? He asked quietly. Lena's voice was steady. The one who lived. The sheriff's jaw dropped. What do you mean? Lena's gaze flicked toward the door, toward the burned well waiting in the dark. I mean you weren't the only one watching. I was too. Silence settled over the kitchen. The lantern flickered and shadows danced on the walls. Doyle swallowed again. This isn't possible. Lena's small frame straightened. It is. And now you're going to answer for it. The cowboy felt the years of silence in his chest shift uncomfortably. The fire, the well, the lies, it was all alive again. Lena stepped fully into the light. I didn't come for food. I came for the truth. Doyle's eyes flicked to her, then to the old cowboy. You can't, Lena's voice cut him off. I already can. The cowboy sank into his chair, heart pounding. Outside, the night whispered against the barn. The well waited, black and silent, as if it had been holding its breath for 20 years. And for the first time, all three of them understood that nothing would ever be the same again. The room went quiet after Lena's words, the air thick with smoke of memory no one dared name. The old cowboy leaned against the sink, knuckles white, eyes fixed on the floorboards as if the wood might speak the truths he had buried. Lena's gaze never wavered from him, small hands folded on the table, steady like stone. Talk, he said finally, voice rough. Tell me what you mean. She swallowed, calm but unrelenting. The fire. It wasn't an accident. The cowboy rubbed his face with both hands, leaning heavily against the counter. Kid, stop. I can't, Lena said. It was set. They trapped them inside. They wanted silence. He looked up sharply. Who? Who wanted what? The families, she whispered, the ones who held the town in their hands. They didn't want anyone knowing what was in the ledger, what was owed, what was stolen. The cowboy felt a chill run down his spine. He remembered faces in the smoke. Screams that had haunted him in dreams. Stop. Stop naming names, he said, voice breaking. Lena leaned forward slightly. You were there. You tried to save some of them. His hands dropped. I tried. But I was too late. Too late, she repeated softly, her eyes cutting into him. And they blamed you for silence. The cowboy's throat tightened. You didn't stop it, Lena said. You turned away. You hid it. And everyone suffered for it. He shook his head, taking a step back. Kid, you don't understand. I understand enough, Lena said, voice low. Enough to know what was done, who survived, and who didn't. The lantern flickered between them. Shadows danced on the walls, twisting like smoke into shapes he wished he could forget. He ran a hand through his beard. I've carried it for 20 years. And that's why you're here, she said softly. Why you took me in. You knew I'd come. The cowboy froze. You knew? Lena nodded, eyes serious. I came for the truth. Not the food. Not your pity. He felt a heavy weight pressing on his chest. The fire, it took them all. My friends. My family. Everyone I could have saved. Lena leaned closer. And that's why I remembered. He swallowed hard. His hands shook slightly. Kid, you weren't even born then. No, she said, but memory doesn't care about bodies. It sticks. The smoke, the screams, the fear, it stays. I carry it now. The cowboy stepped back toward the window, looking out at the blackened outline of the barn in the scarred well. I didn't know who to trust. I thought hiding it would help. I thought silence would protect. Lena cut him off. Silence protects no one. Not the living. Not the dead. The old man's breath shook in the cold kitchen air. He looked at her small, determined face, at the clarity in her eyes, and realized she carried more than hunger. She carried accusation, memory, and judgment. You saw them, she said, voice calm, before the fire got them. You know the fear. The heat. The screams. You felt it. And you walked away. The cowboy's jaw tightened. I tried to. I tried to fight it. Lena shook her head. It wasn't about fighting fire. It was about truth. You can't burn it away, can't hide it in shadows. It comes back. Always. The room was heavy with quiet, the kind that pressed on bones. The old cowboy gripped the edge of the table. Kid. I thought I'd buried it. Thought it was gone. Thought I'd left the ashes behind. Lena's eyes glimmered. Ashes don't forget. They whisper. And they brought me here. The cowboy's voice was barely audible. Why me? Lena tilted her head. Because you're the only one left who didn't die. And because only you can remember it with me. The lantern flickered again, throwing a shadow across his lined face. I don't know if I can do this, he admitted. Lena's voice softened but stayed firm. You can. You've carried the weight long enough. It's time someone spoke it. He nodded slowly, swallowing against the lump in his throat. Time someone finally heard it. Outside, the wind rattled the old barn doors, and the burned well waited in silence, black and unyielding. Inside, the kitchen felt smaller, older, haunted by things unspoken. Lena leaned back slightly, still calm, still staring. The fire never ended, she said softly. And neither will the truth. The cowboy's chest tightened. Memories pressed against him, hot and raw. He thought of the screams, the smoke, the black stone of the well. He looked at the child across the table. All right, he said, voice low and rough. Then we speak. All of it. Lena's eyes flickered with something that was not hope. Something harder. Yes, she whispered. We speak. Outside, the ranch sat under the dark sky, still and waiting, as if it had held its breath for 20 years. Inside, the fire of memory was just beginning. The sheriff came the next morning, kicking up dust along the gravel road. He stopped at the gate, badge gleaming faintly in the early light. Lena stiffened at the sight, her small frame rigid. The old cowboy met him at the porch, arms crossed. "You're early," he said. Doyle's eyes swept over the ranch as if measuring everything, taking stock. "Kid been seen wandering," he said. "That so?" The cowboy raised an eyebrow. Lena stayed behind him, silent, watching the man. "She's with me," the cowboy said. Doyle's gaze flicked to her. "She doesn't belong here." "She does now," the cowboy replied. Doyle smirked thinly. "You know what happens to kids like her." The cowboy's jaw tightened. "I know what happens to men like you." Silence settled. The wind rustled the barn roof. "The family sent me," Doyle said finally, voice low. "They want the ledger quiet. The debts hidden. The fire forgotten." Lena's small voice cut in. "You mean they said it on purpose?" Doyle blinked. That's nothing you should understand." "I do understand," Lena said. "I know what they wanted. I know who survived. I know who didn't." The cowboy watched the sheriff flinch. Doyle's fingers curled slightly at his sides. "You're lying," he said, trying to regain control. Lena shook her head. "No. I was there in memory. I saw it. I remember everything you tried to bury." The cowboy took a step forward. "Kid, careful. You don't know what you're saying." "I do," Lena said. "And you've been lying all this time. You watched it burn. You let people die to protect your families, your power, your money. You're not a lawman. You're a coward." Doyle's eyes narrowed. "That's enough," he said sharply. Lena took a step closer, fearless, unwavering. "No. Not enough. The town, the people, the families, they all played their part. And you're not going to erase it now." The cowboy ran a hand down his face. Doyle's smirk faltered as he glanced at him. He's protecting you?" Doyle asked. Lena nodded slightly. "Because you're afraid." The cowboy stepped between them. "Kid's right. You're afraid of the truth catching up." Doyle's jaw tightened. "I don't need this. None of it is real." Lena's voice was calm, deliberate. "It's as real as the fire. As real as the smoke. As real as the ashes you left behind." Doyle's fingers itched toward his coat. The cowboy's eyes hardened. "Don't." Lena tilted her head. "You thought you could control it all, hide it, silence it. But someone remembers. Someone sees. Someone speaks." Doyle's voice trembled slightly. I followed orders." Lena stepped fully into the porch light, small but commanding. "Orders don't make murder okay. They make you a liar. A coward. A killer." The cowboy's hands curled into fists at his sides. Doyle's eyes flicked between the two of them, realizing the power had shifted. "This is not what I planned," he said, voice shaking. Lena's gaze cut into him. "No, you didn't plan for anyone to survive the memory. To witness it. But here I am." The wind carried a low creak from the barn behind them. The old well waited silently, dark and unmoving. Doyle's voice was almost a whisper. "Why her?" he asked. "Why now?" The cowboy answered, voice low. "Because she remembers. And she doesn't forget." Lena's eyes never left him. "The families can't silence me. The town can't erase me. You can't burn me away." Doyle swallowed hard. His hands dropped slightly. You're impossible." Lena smiled faintly, not warm but knowing. "No. I'm inevitable." The cowboy nodded toward her. "You heard her. You leave now, or you stay and face it." Doyle's gaze flicked at the burned well in the distance, at the scarred boards, at the shadows of memory that stretched across the ranch. He swallowed again. I'll leave. Lena's voice was soft but firm. Not for long. You'll be back. You always come back. Doyle hesitated, then turned toward the road, boots kicking up dust. Lena exhaled slowly, eyes tracing his retreat. The cowboy placed a steady hand on her shoulder. You okay? She nodded, small but unwavering. I've been waiting a long time, she said. The cowboy looked toward the burned well again, understanding for the first time how much had been hidden behind silence. Then it's time, he said quietly. Lena glanced up at him. Time for what? Time to speak. Time to finish it, he said, voice rough. Time to end what the fire started. The wind rattled the barn doors. Shadows flickered across the yard. Inside the ranch, the lingering smoke of memory felt almost alive. Lena's small frame stood firm, eyes bright with purpose. The old cowboy breathed in deep. He knew that from this moment on, nothing would be the same. The ledger, the fire, the families, they all hung in the air, waiting. And this time, someone would remember. The morning light crept weakly across the kitchen floor, but Lena had already claimed her place at the table. She stared at the burned boards of the old well through the window, small hands clenched into fists. The old cowboy leaned against the counter, sipping coffee slowly, watching her. You still thinking about that well? He asked. Lena didn't look at him. It's not just a well, she said quietly. It's memory. It's fire. It's everyone who didn't make it out. The cowboy set the cup down, voice low. Kid, you've been talking like you were there before you were born. How does that even work? Lena's eyes met his. I don't know. Maybe it's not about time. Maybe it's about truth. I remember it because it needs remembering. The old man felt a chill run through him. Memory doesn't work like that. Bodies in fire don't talk. Maybe they do, Lena said. Maybe they wait for someone who can listen. She pushed herself up from the chair and walked slowly toward the door, glancing at him over her shoulder. You ever hear voices when you're alone? She asked. Not since my wife passed, he muttered. Sometimes I hear her. Sometimes I swear I feel her in the air. Lena nodded slightly. That's me. That's what I hear too. The ones who didn't make it. The cowboy's eyes narrowed. Kid, you're saying you're them? Lena paused at the porch, looking back at him. I carry them. I remember their fear, their pain. And I came to make sure someone listens. He rubbed his face with both hands. I thought I buried it all. The fire, the screams, the ashes. I thought silence would hold them. Silence doesn't hold anything, Lena said. It only makes ghosts grow louder. That's why I'm here. That's why I remember. The cowboy studied her small frame, her calm in the middle of something he had tried to forget for 20 years. Kid, you got no right to hold all that, he said. I didn't ask for it, Lena replied softly. But it was given anyway. The fire, the well, it chose me. He felt the weight of her words settle in the room. You mean to tell me all this time you've been carrying the memories of people who died in the fire? Lena nodded slowly. Every scream. Every smoke-filled breath. Every minute they thought someone would save them and no one did. It's all with me. I see it, I feel it. That's why I knew where to come. The cowboy's hands trembled slightly on the counter. And you remember names? Lena's small voice was firm. I remember faces. Voices. The ones who begged and the ones who ran. I remember everyone you couldn't save. He swallowed hard, thinking of his own failures, the neighbors he had tried to warn, the families he had promised to protect. Kid, why tell me all this? Lena turned her gaze back to the blackened well in the yard. Because you're the only one left who can understand the fire from both sides. You saw it. You survived it. You carried it too. You can help me speak it. The cowboy let out a breath, feeling decades of guilt press on his chest. Kid. I don't know if I can handle it again. Lena stepped closer, small but unshakable. You can. You already have. You carried the memory so it wouldn't get lost. Now it's time for both of us to make it speak. The wind rattled the barn doors, carrying the scent of smoke and old wood. The cowboy looked at the scarred stones of the well outside. I buried enough back then. I thought it was gone. Lena shook her head. It never goes away. Not really. It waits. And now it waits with me. He sighed, closing his eyes briefly. All right. You remember everything. I remember some. Maybe together, Lena's voice cut through softly, steady like the ringing of a bell. We'll make sure the world knows. The cowboy opened his eyes. Kid, you're more than a child. You're a witness. A reckoning. Lena nodded once. I didn't come here for pity. I came to be heard. To make sure the fire doesn't lie. Outside, the ranch sat quiet. The burned well waited in its shadow, black and silent. Inside, the kitchen felt smaller, heavier, as if the walls remembered what the floors could not forget. Lena sat down again, hands folded, calm but unflinching. The fire never ended, she said. And neither will the truth. The old cowboy exhaled, letting the weight press down fully. Then we speak, he said quietly. All of it. Lena's eyes flickered, steady and unwavering. Yes, she whispered. All of it. The wind shifted, rattling the barn doors. The memories pressed in closer, alive now, waiting. And together, they would listen, speak, and remember. The day was thick with heat, but inside the ranch house, tension burned hotter. The sheriff's truck had returned, tires crunching over the gravel with a rhythm that made Lena's small frame stiffen. The old cowboy stood at the doorway, hands on his hips, eyes shadowed. Doyle stepped out, badge glinting, trying to hold his usual calm. I told you to leave, the cowboy said, voice low and dangerous. Doyle's lips pressed into a thin line. I came back for the ledger, he said, voice steady but brittle. Lena's eyes narrowed. You came back for lies, she said softly. The sheriff's jaw twitched. I'm law here, he said. Law? Lena spat the word. Law didn't save them. Law watched them burn. The cowboy's hand twitched toward the rifle in the corner. Doyle noticed but didn't flinch. That fire. Lena cut him off sharply. You ordered it. You let people die. You're not a lawman. You're a coward hiding behind a badge. Doyle's hands curled into fists at his sides. Enough, he said. You don't know what you're saying. Lena took a step forward, small but fearless. I know what you did. I know what you watched. You can't lie now. Not to me. Not to him. Not to yourself. The cowboy's eyes narrowed. Kid, careful. Lena ignored him. The families thought they could bury the truth. They thought power could hide murder. They were wrong. Doyle's face tightened. You're insane, he said, voice shaking. Insane? Lena's voice rose slightly. No. I'm alive. I saw the fire. I felt the smoke. I remember them screaming while you stood there. The cowboy's jaw clenched. Doyle took a step back, realizing the power in the small figure before him. You don't understand, he said. I followed orders. Orders don't make you clean, Lena said softly. They make you a liar. A killer. The wind rattled the barn doors outside, the sound sharp and hollow. Doyle's eyes flicked toward the burned well in the distance, black against the day. Lena's gaze followed. That well doesn't lie. It holds everything you tried to hide. And now, so do I. Doyle's hands trembled slightly. You can't, Lena stepped closer. I can. I do. And I will. The cowboy shifted slightly, watching Doyle's facade crumble. "Kid's right," he said quietly. "You're not law. You're fear wrapped in a badge." Doyle's lips pressed tight. "I never thought," he trailed off, eyes darting to the porch, the yard, the burned stones. "Thought what?" Lena's voice was calm, merciless. "That someone would remember. That someone would come back." The cowboy felt the years of silence press down on him again. "Doyle, leave now." "You stay, you face it," he said. The sheriff's gaze flicked at Lena, then back to the old man. I can't," he muttered. Lena's eyes glimmered. "You will. Or you'll stay and burn in it yourself." Doyle swallowed. His hands dropped to his sides, the badge dull in the lantern light. "I'll leave," he said finally, voice quiet. He stepped back toward the road, boots kicking up dust. Lena's small figure relaxed slightly but did not look away from him. The old cowboy exhaled, leaning against the doorframe. "You okay?" he asked. Lena nodded. "I've waited a long time." The cowboy glanced toward the burned well again, understanding the silence that had stretched for decades. "Then it's time," he said quietly. Lena's gaze followed him. "Time for what?" "Time to speak. Time to end what the fire started," he said, voice rough. The wind rattled the barn doors again. Shadows twisted across the yard. Inside, the air felt thick with old smoke and new truth. Lena's small frame remained firm, eyes bright and unflinching. The old cowboy exhaled, knowing that from this day forward, the ledger, the fire, and the families would no longer hide in silence. And this time, someone would remember. The night air pressed against the ranch like it carried secrets, the barn doors creaking with every gust. Lena led the way across the yard, small steps quick and sure over uneven ground, the old cowboy close behind her. The blackened stones of the well waited, silent, scarred, a reminder of every life lost in fire and smoke decades ago. Lena stopped at the edge of the well, her fingers brushing the charred rim. "It's all here," she said softly. "Every scream. Every hope. Every promise broken." The cowboy leaned over, feeling the heatless stone under his fingers. "Kid, you sure you want to do this?" Lena's eyes didn't waver. "I have to." They didn't get to finish their story. "I will." He nodded slowly, the weight of her words settling deep in his chest. The wind carried a faint smell of charred wood and ash from the distant barn, and shadows danced along the ground, twisted and alive. Lena knelt slightly and whispered toward the well. "I remember you. I saw it all. I carry you." The cowboy swallowed, uneasy at her calm, at the clarity in her small voice. "It's like they're speaking through you," he said. Lena looked at him briefly. "They are." They waited for someone who could listen. He shook his head slowly. "I thought I buried it. Thought the fire would be the end." Lena's hand moved to his, small but firm. "The fire never ended. It lives in memory, in silence, in the ground. And it brought me here." He felt a chill crawl up his spine. "Kid, you carry more than hunger. You carry justice." Lena's eyes flickered toward the blackness of the well. "I carry them. I remember them. And now you will too." The cowboy leaned closer, voice low. "I've tried to forget. Tried to let the town forget." Lena's small hand pressed against the stone. "No more forgetting. They deserve to be remembered." The wind rattled the barn again, louder this time, as if it were answering. Lena's voice was steady, soft, unflinching. "Speak with me. See them. Hear them. Don't turn away." The cowboy knelt beside her, hand on the cool stone. "All right," he said. "I'll see. I'll hear." Lena exhaled slowly, as if releasing a weight long held. "Listen then. They are here. The ones burned, the ones silenced. They want someone to remember." He closed his eyes, the decades of guilt and fear pressing in. Faint whispers rose from memory, carried on the wind through the trees and across the yard. Lena's fingers gripped the edge of the well. "Do you hear them?" she asked softly. He nodded, voice tight. "I do." The air seemed heavier, thick with smoke and sorrow. Lena's eyes shone in the dim light. "They are not gone. Not while we remember." The cowboy swallowed, feeling the past pressing alive against him. "Then we speak. We won't let them be buried again." Lena looked down into the dark stone, calm and unafraid. "No. Not ever." Outside, the wind twisted through the trees and the barn. The old well waited, black and patient. Inside, the ranch held its breath. Two witnesses knelt at its edge, listening, remembering, and giving voice to the fire that had never truly died. The wind had shifted by nightfall, carrying a dry, sharp edge that made the old cowboy tighten his coat around him. The sky hung low and heavy, shadows stretching across the ranch like long fingers. Lena stood near the porch, eyes on the dark outline of the burned well behind the barn. Her small hands clenched at her sides, steady despite the tension coiling through the air. "They'll come again," she said softly. "The families. The ones who think fire can bury truth." The old cowboy studied her carefully. "Kid, you ready for that?" Lena's gaze didn't waver. "I've been ready since I remembered. This is the fire that never ended. I'm not running." He nodded slowly, eyes flicking to the horizon where the dark road led back toward town. "Neither am I. Too many lies left standing." The lantern inside the kitchen flickered as a truck appeared on the gravel, headlights cutting through the night. The sheriff stepped out, a hard line to his jaw. "I warned you," Doyle said. "You shouldn't be here." Lena moved forward, small but unflinching. "I'm here," she said simply. "And I remember." Doyle's eyes darted to the burned well. You can't." "I can," Lena interrupted. "I carry them. Every voice. Every scream. And this time, I won't let you bury it again." The old cowboy's hand hovered near the rifle in the corner. Doyle noticed but didn't move. "Kid, careful," the cowboy muttered. Lena shook her head. "No. Careful is letting them die. I've already carried their fear. Now it's time you faced it." The sheriff's shoulders tensed, his usual calm cracking. "You think you can stop it? Stop what's coming?" Lena's voice was quiet but fierce. "No. I know I can't stop it. But I can make it speak." The old cowboy stepped beside her, voice low and steady. "We won't let the fire lie again." The sheriff laughed, hollow, bitter. "You're just children playing at justice." Lena's eyes met his. "I'm no child. I'm the memory you tried to kill. And I won't forget." Doyle's fingers twitched at his coat, hand hovering near his holster. The old cowboy's gaze locked on him. "Don't. Not here. Not tonight." Lena stepped toward the burned well, her small form framed by lantern light. "You tried to burn them away once. You failed. Now you'll face the truth." A gust of wind rattled the barn doors. Shadows danced along the yard. Doyle took a step back, eyes flicking at the blackened stones. I can't," Lena shook her head slowly. "You can. You have to. Or stay and burn in the memory with them." The old cowboy's voice was steady, deliberate. "Time to end it. Time to see what the fire took. No more running, no more silence." Lena reached the edge of the well and leaned slightly, peering into the blackness. "They're waiting," she said softly. "Waiting for justice, waiting for truth." Doyle's breath caught. The past pressed around him like smoke. This isn't real," he said. Lena's small voice cut clear through the tension. "It's as real as the screams you watched. As real as the ashes you left behind. And now you face it." The wind picked up again, carrying the scent of charred wood. Shadows from the barn stretched across the yard, black and relentless. The old cowboy exhaled slowly, feeling the decades of silence, the hidden truths pressing back. Lena's gaze stayed on the well. "I'm not afraid." "And neither should you be," she said, firm and unwavering. Doyle's hands dropped, the badge dull against his chest. I leave," he muttered finally, stepping back toward the road. Lena's small frame remained steady, eyes bright in the lantern light. The old cowboy placed a hand on her shoulder. "Kid, this is just the beginning," he said. She nodded. "Yes. But this time, we won't run from it. We'll see it. Hear it. Speak it." Outside, the burned well waited, black and silent, patient as ever. Inside, the ranch breathed with memory and fire. The wind carried whispers of the past across the yard. And for the first time in decades, the fire had no one left to hide it. The morning came slow, heavy with heat that pressed against the ranch walls. Lena stood at the edge of the yard, small hands resting on the fence, eyes fixed on the blackened well behind the barn. The old cowboy stepped beside her, shoulders stiff, face lined with years he couldn't shake. "You ready for this?" he asked quietly. Lena didn't turn to him. "I'd been ready since the first night I remembered. This is the fire that never ended. I carry it, and now it's time someone else sees it." He swallowed hard, thinking of the smoke, the screams, the ash, the neighbors who never returned. "Kid, it's one thing to remember. It's another to make them face it." She glanced at him sharply. "Someone has to. Or it keeps burning in silence." He nodded slowly, understanding more than he wanted. "All right. Let's do it." They walked toward the burned well together. Each step across the yard stirred dust and memories alike. Lena's small fingers brushed the charred stones. "They're waiting," she whispered. "For someone to remember them. To speak for them." The old cowboy leaned closer, voice low. "I see them too. Their fear. Their fire. Their pain." Lena's gaze lifted to him. "Then we speak. Together." The wind rattled the barn doors, carrying faint whispers that could have been memory, or the past itself trying to answer. "It's time to name them," Lena said softly. The cowboy closed his eyes. "Names, faces, the people we failed. All of them?" Lena nodded once. "Every one. They trusted us with their memory. We can't betray them." He drew a deep breath and knelt beside her, hand brushing the cool, scarred stones. "Then we speak," he said quietly, voice rough with emotion. Lena exhaled, small but steady. "Yes. We speak." Shadows from the barn stretched across the yard like long fingers. The blackened rim of the well seemed to pulse in the morning light. "They will hear us," Lena said. "And the families can't hide it anymore." The old cowboy's eyes burned with decades of guilt and relief. "No more silence," he said. Lena's voice softened, unwavering. "No more hiding. The fire never ended, and neither will the truth." Together, they leaned closer, speaking names, recounting screams, tracing the smoke and ash that had lingered for decades. Each word, each memory, felt like lifting a weight off the air itself. The ranch seemed to hold its breath, listening, remembering. The old cowboy exhaled slowly. "It's done," he said. Lena's small frame relaxed slightly. "No," she whispered. "It's only beginning. But now, they are remembered." Outside, the wind shifted again, carrying the smell of charred wood and distant smoke. The blackened well waited silently, patient and still. Inside, the ranch held a quiet that felt like both sorrow and relief. They had faced the fire, faced memory, and finally spoken the truth that had burned in silence for 20 years. And for the first time, someone alive remembered everything. The sky was bruised and low when Lena stepped onto the porch, small figure framed by the morning light that bled across the yard. The old cowboy leaned against the railing, hands gripping the wood like he might hold himself together. Behind them, the burned well waited in silence, black and patient, as if it had watched all this unfold from the start. "It's quiet now," he said, voice rough, almost afraid to break the hush. Lena shook her head slowly, eyes on the horizon. "It's never quiet. It's just listened. The cowboy exhaled, chest tight. I thought we'd buried it with fire. You can't bury memory, she said softly. You carry it, or it carries you. He looked at her small frame, fierce and unwavering. Kid, you've done what I never could. You remembered. You made them speak. Lena's lips curved faintly, not a smile, more a line of resolve. They deserve it. And now? I think I can rest. The cowboy nodded, eyes drifting to the blackened stones of the well, the marks of ash and history still etched deep. And the town? He asked. The families? Lena's gaze returned to him. They'll come. They always do. But now they can't hide it. Not the ledger, not the fire, not the truth. Someone alive remembers. The wind stirred, rattling the barn doors, carrying faint scents of smoke long gone, of dust in memory. The old man exhaled slowly, feeling the weight lift slightly, the decades of guilt softening just enough to breathe. Lena stepped closer to the well, small hands resting on the charred stones. I'll keep listening, she said. I'll carry them. Until the town knows. He placed a hand lightly on her shoulder. Then, the fire isn't the end. It's just the beginning. You and me. Remembering. Speaking. Surviving. She nodded once, firm and unflinching. Exactly. Surviving. The morning light strengthened, brushing gold across the yard, the barn, the porch. The well waited, black and unmoving, patient as it had always been. Lena turned toward the old cowboy. Thank you, she said simply. He nodded, voice low, gravelly. No. Thank you, for making me face it. They stood together for a long moment, quiet but aware of everything that had happened, everything that had burned, everything that still remained in memory. Then Lena stepped down from the porch, small boots crunching against the gravel, walking slowly toward the gate. The old cowboy followed, heavy but steady, eyes on the horizon. The wind carried faint echoes of the past, whispers of the fire, the people lost, the truths finally spoken. The ranch seemed to breathe with them, walls and floorboards soaking in the final reckoning. Lena paused at the gate, looked back once at the burned well. I'll keep coming back, she said. For them. He nodded, understanding.